had to learn Atlanta. I've asked my friend Dawn to give the invocation tonight. He's with Rivers of Mercy Church on Davis Street, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. We bow our heads. Father, we thank you tonight for just the opportunity to be here in the midst of your people. We thank you, God, that the hand of the kings are in your hand. We thank you, God, tonight that the Bible says that we should have the mind of Christ. We pray tonight for this distinguished council, that tonight, that as they make decisions, as they plan for the city, that, Father, as they set a course for the future, that your hands be upon them tonight. We even pray over our mayor tonight, God, that you would continue to touch him, that your hand would forever be upon him, that, God, that he would be able to lead in the manner that you would see fit. We thank you, Father, that this city is your city. And we pray, God, that your protection be over it. We thank you, God, for the decisions that are made tonight, Father, for the course that is set. And we declare tonight in this place that your will be done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate your coming tonight. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Let the record reflect that all members of the council are present. And moving to needing a motion for approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Crawford. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, I need to move to the approval of the consent agenda. These are the items that we discussed last week in the work session.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Nathan Little. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, we're moving to the public forum. I have four who have signed up to speak. We'll start with Ms. Pam Blanford. She is on McDaniel Street. I thought I saw her in the back. Hey, Pam, come on up. You have 5 minutes, please, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Pam McDonald Blanford. I live at 697 McDaniel Street. I'd like to thank you council members for allowing me to come out and speak tonight. I was born and raised in Monroe. Over 6 generations of my family have lived in Monroe. My grandparents and my parents were business owners in Monroe for over 75 years. I've seen our little town grow throughout the years in many different ways. I am speaking to you tonight about the subdivision that is planned on Holly Hill and McDaniel Streets. I was a teacher in Gwinnett County for over 20 years. I watched that community go through the same type growth that we are experiencing here in Monroe. I watched the changes and the effect that growth has had on Lilburn and Grayson communities firsthand. The growth is both a blessing and a curse. It is a blessing in the new restaurants and businesses that help a community, as well as the young families moving into the community to keep the community alive and thriving. It is a curse in that the infrastructure must be able to plan and handle all this growth. It is important for a community to stay ahead by anticipating all the needs that this growth will place on the city, as far as the roads, the water and sewage, the police and fire departments, which are already understaffed, as well as the school systems. I witnessed firsthand as a teacher in Grayson what the effect of growth can do. When I started teaching in Grayson, there was 1 middle school and 1 high school. Within 4 years, there are 2 additional middle schools and a second high school. They are currently in the process of building more schools. Both of these communities, as well as Loganville, are examples that we can use as a guide for the future of Monroe. The planning and development of new communities is important to prevent for overdevelopment with high-density sites that affect the character of a neighborhood. The proposed development is overbearing and out of scale and character in terms of its appearance compared to the existing development in our neighborhood. Please help us keep the character of our existing neighborhoods. I urge you to plan carefully and execute slowly. Thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate your coming out. Mr. Bruce Chick, also from McDaniel Street at 690. Good evening.
Model display, of course, to take a look at, because I think pictures have a lot of meaning.
Yes, sir.
What Ms. Blandford just referred to is Article 6 of the zoning covenants.
Thank
And
you.
I won't read that back again or quote those. What Ms. Blandford was referring to is Article 6, Section 600, 610.2, specific intent and purpose, subparagraph 2A, talks about Article 6. So I'm not going to reread what she just articulated, but I appreciate her doing that, bringing it to the council's attention. Good evening, Mayor John Howard and City Council members. My name is Bruce Chick, and I have lived in Walton County since the age of 12 years old. Since 1992, for 28 years. I've resided on McDaniel Street. My father is 92 years old and a lifelong resident of Walton County. My grandmother resided on Clearview Drive until her death at the age of 102. I'm a proponent of growth within Walton County, downtown city development, and historical preservation for our current and next generation. I come before you this evening to discuss my concern of Mr. Mark Willett, Cross Point Investments, LLC's purchase and development of 13 lots facing McDaniel Street, subdivided into 10 subunits. His intent is to place 10 homes in an area that currently has a total of 4 well-established homes directly across the street, hence the model that you have in front of you. The housing units proposed by Mr. Willett will sit on 1/4 to 1/2 acre lots ranging from 75-foot road frontage with only a 30-foot setback. Each home now on McDaniel Street within this area that you see on the display ranges from 150 to 250-foot road frontage, 1 to 2 acre lots with 100 and 150 feet setbacks, nearly double, and in some cases triple, the area of his proposal. There are several issues regarding Mr. Willett's proposed plans for McDaniel Street. It begins first with a non-transparent process of bypassing this council forum on the first 4 lots, which were deeded without your knowledge or approval. Now the 6 remaining lots will include overlapping an area 1/2 to 1/3 of the current area directly across the street. The obvious 3 concerns are future property values, traffic volume, and storm drain water runoff that we're experiencing now and as of last week as well. First, the property values. The homes currently on McDaniel Street range from 2,500 square feet and $280,000 to 15 acres and $795,000. The housing units proposed by Mr. Willett are 1,600 square feet minimum, assumingly 200,000, which will significantly reduce the overall property value of each and every resident on McDaniel Street, Holly Hill, and Districts 1, 3, and 4, resulting in an overall tax base loss for the city as a whole. Traffic volume. Since 1992, I have requested no less than 6 traffic studies to analyze the excess volume, flow, and high rate of speed of motorists that use McDaniel Street as a cut-through to Breelove Drive and on to Michael Etchinson. My request was to install 2 to 3 speed humps similar to the ones installed here on Highland Avenue. To date, that has not been done. Developing these 10 lots will not decrease traffic flow, but conversely increase traffic flow at an exceptional and exponential rate and volume. Storm drainage runoff. Another significant issue currently in the same area of Mr. Willett's 10 lots is the stormwater drainage runoff. From east of his property, moving to the west, lot 3, 4, and 5 will significantly impact the storm drain water runoff to the current and future property homeowners and decrease the city's ability to service the current and ongoing debris and water runoff. We may not be able to stop or halt what Mr. Willett has done with the previous 4 housing units, but we can certainly voice our concerns regarding his intent for the remaining 6 lots. Mr. Willett's reputation in the starter home industry is well known. The housings on McDaniel Street are not starter homes. Our homes are adjacent to the historical district that connects McDaniel Titchener House, A.L. Williams House atop Pinecrest, through one of the oldest and well-established neighborhoods crossing over Breelove Drive past the Presbyterian Church, including St. Ives. These are homes where we have raised our families for generations to protect and preserve the heritage and lineage of our great city of Monroe. Please cast your vote no when it's appropriate. Any future development of Mr. Willett's property on McDaniel Street extending into Holly Hill and Pine Crest if he is not going to follow the R1 covenants in Article 6. Thank you for your time and attention to this most important subject and allowing our voice, the people's voice, to be heard and recognized by your city council forum. Let's move forward with growth and progression, not backwards. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chick, thank you for your comments. I appreciate how well thought out they were, and Ms. Blanford as well, and to all the folks from McDaniel and Holly Hill who've come tonight. We are going to be addressing your issue in just a few minutes, and I hope you'll stick around. I need to move to public hearing for a rezone at 329 Barrett Street. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request by Mr. Rick Holder to carve out a place for the historic home that will be moved from behind the Henson House down Boulevard. One's going on Boulevard, one's going on Barrett Street if this gets approved. And he sends his regrets that he wasn't able to attend tonight. I asked Miss Vicky here if you have any questions, but he would just appreciate it if you guys would approve that, and the recommendation from staff and planning and zoning is for approval.
Thank you, Patrick. I know we've discussed this quite a bit. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? Hearing none, I'll declare that this portion of the meeting open for public input. Are there any comments from our guests? Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the rezone? Hearing none, I'll declare that portion of the meeting closed, and we'll revisit that in just a few minutes. Next, moving to conditional use for 1110 South Madison Avenue. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir. This is an application for a personal care home in a single-family residence located on South Madison Avenue. It's currently adjacent to M1 parcels, as you'll hear from the owner, and they're requesting the conditional use. The recommendation from staff and planning and zoning is for denial based on the highlighted conditions for our standards for conditional use application that are highlighted in your package there.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? I'll declare this portion of the meeting open for the purpose of public input. Is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Mr. Mitchell, how are you? Good, thank you. Would you like to speak? Please come on. I figured I would be a little more formal.
Here, so you have to bear with me.
Yes, sir.
I am Billy Mitchell, and Mayor, council members, thank you for having us. I want to address the concerns that the Planning and Zoning Board had over this being granted a conditional use for assisted living. I'm sure you all received my email, and then you've got the packet from the Planning and Zoning. One of the items in the background, it says, due to a significant number of by right properties available for this particular use throughout the city, a conditional use is not warranted. R1, you can't even apply for a conditional use for this. Only in R1A and R2. You can't apply for it in manufactured housing zone either. So it is limited as to the areas that you can ask for a conditional use. So I disagree with that. And it also says in 1425.5 standards for conditional use application decisions, all of the following conditions have to be met. And Planning and Zoning highlighted number 3, and that was the proposed use is consistent with a comprehensive plan, and the conditional use is compatible with a community development pattern. Well, right now, this property is sitting between a church on the south side, and the motorcycle club is beyond that. On the north side, you have Shifters, which is a nice restaurant. I go there, I enjoy it. You have a C-store, and then behind Shifters and the C-store is a garage and a law office. So it's already multi-use. The R1A zoning for this property is really inconsistent with the area it's in. And all we're asking for is a conditional use. Secondly, on number 5, the proposed use will not be injurious to the natural environment and will maybe diminish property values. Well, if you've ridden down South Madison recently, you'll notice most of those houses are rented. I mean, you can pretty much tell. I've got rental property, I know. Renters don't necessarily take care of property the way homeowners do. And that being the case, I don't think you're going to have this property be injurious to the rest in the area. And as far as property values, we've already brought the property value up by taking this property over. There were people living there for a year or more, and they haven't had utilities turned on in that house since June of 2018. You can imagine what we incurred when we got in there. People living there, no utilities, no water, no electricity. So we've already made an improvement to it, and we're just trying to go further with that. 6, off-street parking and loading and access thereto will be adequate. The people that stay there, they don't have vehicles. The only people that have vehicles there are the attendants. So actually, you'll have less parking than you would if it was a family that was living there, a family of 4 in a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home. Number 8, the use will not be an extension of a use which will cause a damaging volume, higher density residence use into a stable neighborhood of well-maintained single-family homes. There again, the density would not be any higher than a family of 4 living there, as it would with 4 residents living there under assisted living and an attendant. And then additional request of a similar nature which would expand the problem. And I think that carries on into 10, which this request would not have a domino effect that comes the opening wedge for further rapid growth. I looked around on the city zoning map, and you can't find one R1A property that's surrounded entirely by an M1 property, which is industrial. There's not one in the city. There are some residences still on Spring Street that surrounded by business but not industrial. So if somebody came to you and said 1110 South Madison was granted this, why don't you do it for us? You can say, well, does your property, is it surrounded by M1 properties, industrial? Does it have a abandoned railroad track and an abandoned concrete facility behind it, causing blight? No, they couldn't say that because the only property has it is this one. And there's also been some concerns that these facilities are not looked after by the state in a regular manner. Ms. Taylor, who I'd like you to meet in just a moment briefly, she's the co-applicant. She handles people with mental disabilities, and the state requires a monthly visit, not once a year, not once every 6 months, a monthly visit to ensure that these people are making their doctor's appointments, these people are taking their medications. So an assisted living facility here is going to get more attention than assisted living that doesn't have the mental disabilities. And she's got an exemplary record. She's got 10 years in the business. You don't stay in this business for 10 years if you're doing a bad job. She's got accreditations that I emailed to each and every one of you. So I think she's the type of person you want in one of these facilities. And in closing, while you're deliberating on this, I want you to look at 3 things. First, the property location. I've already told you how it's isolated there. It's not in the same group as the surrounding area. And furthermore, at the other end of Madison, at 235 Marable Street, we have what's known as Marable Manor. And it's a great-looking building. They've been there for a long time. Y'all had to grant a conditional use for that at one time, and they're doing well. You can't stereotype these things into one category. We don't do that. Also, on Church Street, 302 Church Street, there's Marable Manor 2. I guess they didn't like the name church, so they just made it Marable. But anyway, they're another personal care home. Been there for a long time. Looks great. Doing a good job, as far as I know. So I don't think we can group all these into one category. And the second thing, the applicant, Ms. Taylor, like I said, she's got a great record in it, 10 years, and she's been certified, no blemishes, no criminal history at all. If you do some bad things in this, you're going to get caught. She doesn't have that. She wants to come to Monroe and open a business here. How great is that? Take care of folks that need some taken care of. Somebody that needs to cook for them, clean for them, help them in and out of the shower. Last, the need. I was looking at CNBC this morning, and they said 10,000 people a day are turning 65. Our population's aging. She doesn't just care for the aged, she cares for people with mental disabilities. But what I'm saying, you're going to encounter more of this. Everybody can't afford Great Oaks. Everybody can't go to Park Place. There's a waiting list. There's going to have to be a place to care for them. The young, the old, the rich, the poor, the sick, the well, they all need a place. You as a council may be making that decision. I ask for you to look at it through common sense, see that this is a good fit, and make the right decision. And at this time, Mr. Mayor, the time I have left, I'd like for Ms. Taylor to say a few words, but before I relinquish the podium, I'll take any questions from you and the council.
We'll come back to you with questions maybe in just a couple of minutes, but I'd like to hear Ms. Taylor.
All right, Ms. Taylor?
How are you, ma'am? Thank you for coming.
Good evening, Council Board. Thanks for having me. My name is Agnes Taylor. Mr. Mitchell said 10 years, but I've been in the business for 20 years this year, September. These are mental disability individuals that some of them don't even have families. So the state is trying to transition them from the institution, because when the law was made before, long ago, they were not supposed to be mixed with anybody. So that makes it difficult for us to even find place for them to stay. But that's not the point where we are here. I'm just asking and seeking for them, advocating for them, that someone will understand, the council will understand that. We just want them to have a nice place to stay. We already have 2 homes in Monroe. They are on Highway 11. And we have to move some of them because they've gotten older. Some of them have steps. We have one in Winder. And we want a ranch. And it's difficult to find a ranch in a neighborhood. In the neighborhood is no. Now, when we go out of the neighborhood, then we have to come in front of the council member and all to be approved. So, but we are monitored by the state. The state has the nurses in line, the assessment in line, the case worker in line, the family members in line, if they have any family member. Even if they don't have, the case worker are the ones who stand for them. And we just can't treat them any kind of way. I'm from another country, so I know what it is to be into a strange country, and I'm just thankful to God. I'm blessed. But these are people, my mother, what brought me into this business is my mother being sick. And I took care of her, my sisters and I, because we were rotated. And every time I took my mom to the hospital, I saw these people coming in. And that's how I followed up until I organized the business. But I worked with them all the time before. They even lived with me in my house for a couple of years before I took them out because we couldn't find anywhere for them to stay. So now we're trying to get them out there where they will have their own homes and consider it a home. So I'm just asking that you all just deep down, it could be me, it could be anybody's child. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Do I have anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of the conditional use? Do I have anyone here who'd like to speak against the conditional use? Hearing no comments, I'll declare that portion of the meeting closed. We'll revisit that in just a few minutes. Next, moving to the rezone at 341 North Broad Street, Mr. Kelly.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This property is currently a split-zoned property. The applicant is requesting a rezone to make it all R1. And then there's a subsequent issue next. That'll be a variance on one of the lots where they weren't able to comply with the frontage, but that's a separate issue. This is just for the rezone.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? Is the applicant here? Mr. Rosenthal?
Good to be before you tonight, and just so that everybody's clear, I'm standing here as the applicant, not as city attorney at this time. I would have had my father come and do this presentation, but he's not well tonight. But as I told you guys last week, I would have a conflict. I own a primary interest in this entity, Monroe Historic Properties, the owner of this property. So should this council need legal advice on this issue, city administrator's office would need to retain conflict counsel. But I am excited to be before you here tonight on this request for a couple of reasons. One is because my wife and I are moving right next door to this property in the next couple of months, and so we will be neighbors to this property request. The other reason why I am excited about this request is we've owned this property for a good long time. We've tried to come up with several different positive uses for it through the years. On the commercial side, we kept getting requests for things such as gas stations and auto zones, and while those may have rendered a positive net investment yield, they didn't fit with what I thought was appropriate for this corner. Many of you know that I've dabbled in a little bit of renovation and restoration through the years of properties here around town, but I'm excited for this new sort of jumping off point, that this is the opportunity for some recreation of old homes gone from days gone by. So the purpose of this request is to rezone this 2.79 acre tract into 3 estate lots, one of them being an acre, one of them being about 0.8 acres, and the other one fronting on Marable at also about 0.9 acres. We already have one of the lots sold to good friends of ours who are planning on building an approximately 5,000 square foot estate home there on lot number 1 in the coming days. All 3 of these lots will be served with a 20-foot rear alley entrance that fronts off of Marable. Lot 1, as you can see on the conceptual plat, will still have a curb cut off of Highway 11, but Lot 2, which is the corner lot, and Lot 3, which fronts off of Marable, will be accessible only from Marable. The existing, sort of what I call the old farmhouse that's sitting right at the corner of Marable and North Broad will stay there for the coming days and continue to be a rental that we maintain until we sell that lot, and then we anticipate at that time that that house would come down and a larger estate size home would go up. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but would appreciate this rezone. And just jumping ahead to the variance, which comes up next, if we didn't use the 20-foot wide alleyway, we could get the legal frontage on Marable. But because the water tower is there, old standpipe, and because we're using a 20-foot common shared alleyway for all 3 lots, we need a variance from 100 foot in width of road frontage to 79 feet in width, a 21% reduction. But all 3 lots are much larger than the minimum required under R1. And half of this property is already zoned R1, and by putting it all in R1, then we won't have to worry about, other uses coming down the pipeline in the future. It can be homes, and we can recreate some good, beautiful old homes along our main thoroughfare there coming into town. So happy to answer any questions you may have, and would appreciate a rezone to R1 and also a variance for that lot frontage on track number 3.
Okay, we'll
Thank you, Mayor.
come back to you in just a minute. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of that rezone? Is there anyone here who'd like to speak against that favor of the rezone? Hearing none, we'll take no action at this time, and we will revisit that in just a few minutes. Regarding 341 North Broad Street, that change, do you have any questions or comments, or would you like to just revisit that as well? We'll revisit that in just a couple of minutes. Moving to the comprehensive plan update, Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a small update to the comprehensive plan as a result of us applying for a community development block grant and economic incentive program grants through the state. As such, they require that our comprehensive plan document list these purposes within the document. So under 17A, under the Community and Facilities and Services section, we're going to add stormwater, street, water, and sewer infrastructure upgrades to the central east area of the city between Spring Street and Church Street. So this just basically gets us in legal compliance to make full application for these grant programs.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Probst? I'll declare this portion of the meeting open for public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of changes or additions to the comprehensive plan? Hearing none, is there anyone who'd like to speak against changes to the comprehensive plan? Hearing none, I'll declare that portion of the meeting closed as well. We'll move to new business, the rezone of 329 Barrett Street. I'll open the floor to council members only for discussion and or action.
Move to grant the rezone, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion by Mr. Dickinson to approve. Was that you, Ross? Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to the conditional use of 1110 South Madison, I'll open the floor to council members for questions and discussion. Mr. Mitchell, would you like to come forward? That's just a wild guess that you're about to get a couple of questions. Ladies and gentlemen. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move approval of the condition.
I have a motion for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Going to go with Lee Malcolm. I have a second by Ms. Malcolm. After a motion by Mr. Larry Bradley. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Mayor, council, thank y'all so much. God bless all.
Yes, sir, you too. Moving to the rezone of 341 North Broad Street, I'll open the floor to council members for discussion and or action.
Move to grant the rezone.
I have a motion by Mr. Dickinson. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Malcolm. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Moving to the variance at 341 North Broad. I don't think we need any comments. Would you like to go ahead and make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the variance.
I have a motion by Mr. Dickinson. Do I hear a second? Second. A second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Moving to the approval of the major subdivision at 945 Holly Hill. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application is a subsequent subdivision of properties, which is why it's before you. At this time, the applicant had previously recorded 4 lots, which just were administratively approved. But any subsequent or any greater than 5-lot creation requires council approval. That's why this is before you now. I'm sure the applicant is here to speak to his request.
Thank you, Mr. Willett. Are you available?
Mr. Mayor,
How are you, sir?
my name is Chuck Ross. I'm an attorney with the firm of Powell and Edwards. We're in Lawrenceville, 10 Lumpkin Street, although we do a lot of work here in Walton County. In fact, we're the city attorneys in Social Circle. So
Are you the applicant?
I am the applicant's attorney from Mr. Willett.
I can listen to Mr. Willett. You can shut your book, okay?
Okay?
Mr. Willett,
Okay.
tell us what you need.
All right, so we're basically, I've come to just, I guess, get permission for the 6 lots. We're not asking for anything that's not part of the ordinance. I mean, we're not asking for a special variance. All 6 lots will have the 100-foot road frontage that the city requires. 3 of the lots are close to 1 acre in size, big lots. The other 3 are around a half acre, 5/8 to a half. So we're just, you know, I thought when I did this that it would just be a in-house signature, and then Mr. Kelly brought it to my attention that it was a 5-lot, and then it went down to a 4-lot, because I think the other lot had to be with the remaining land. So that's why we're here. We're not really asking for any special request that's not in the current ordinance now. I think you guys had some concerns that Mr. Kelly sent to me, and I've got some plans here if y'all want to look at them, just kind of what we're looking at building.
Yes, sir, please.
Let me send those.
We can share.
know, I know there were some comments earlier about starter houses. We're by no means looking at doing starter houses. I actually, my wife and I are looking at building our personal house here. So we've actually had our home in Loganville for 20 years. We've been there. My daughter just bought a house over on Church Street, so she's living there now, loving it. So it's kind of brought our attention to Monroe. We want to come to Monroe, and you guys have done a great job with everything. So that's what we're looking at doing. You know, it's, you know, like I say, it's 100-foot frontages. I think it's in keeping with what's down through there already. It's going to be nice homes. You know, I anticipate, you know, they're going to be $500,000 homes. It's not going to by no means be starter homes.
Are you going to be building, or are you?
I would probably hire a builder. I mean, I know that I built years ago, but, you know, buildings, you know, not. I mean, I know a lot about building, but I probably would hire a local builder.
And I know there's some, I'm going to go ahead and address some things before I open it up to council. I know there's some major concerns on the setbacks. I also know that some of those lots are almost 300+ feet deep. What is your plan on those?
Okay, so, good question. I have no problem in setting the homes back further if suitable. I know on lot number 6, you have the stream buffer, so we can set that house back as far as possible without interfering with that stream buffer.
Okay.
And then lot 7, we can actually go on the other side of the stream buffer and build toward the back of the lot. So you probably, that home won't even see it from the road. And then lot number 8, the same way, we'll put it back all the way 9 and 10. The only one would be lot 5 and 6, to where, you know, lot 5 is a little bit smaller lot, but then lot 6 would be in front of that stream buffer, so.
And those are near the existing driveway
Yes, sir.
coming off the Hensons?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. I'd like to open up to some questions and comments from council.
Hey, Mr. Willie, I'm concerned that we're looking at, and I know the 4 lots already done, and maybe we can't do anything, but I'm concerned that you did the 4 lots administratively and then come right back with the 6 lots that I've come before the council, rather than doing the 10 lots altogether. That's a concern to me, because it looks as me as you just try to find a loophole to go around without coming before the council. Could you address that?
Well, I went to Mr. Kelly, and actually, what we were wanting to do was do the 5 lots and then turn around and do 5 more lots. I know in Walton County, you got the 3 lot minimum where you can do the 3 lots, and then, you know, you come back and you do another 3, and that was not the intention. I honestly didn't even realize that this was considered a major subdivision. You know, I know just in my view of major subdivisions, you know, you have detention ponds, you're grading roads, you're putting in decel lanes, you're putting in sewer, water. I mean, this literally, there's no grading at all. It's literally, the infrastructure is there. It's already in place. So that, it's not that. I know earlier it was commented about the, you know, the infrastructure. I mean, all that's in place. And to answer your question, I mean, we basically did what you guys permit that's in the ordinance. I didn't do anything. You know, I said, well, if you can get 5 lots now, well, let's do 5 lots. I wasn't trying to be deceitful. And Mr. Kelly pointed it out clearly that I got to come before you guys. You know, so I'm like, well, yeah, no problem. I mean, the city of Monroe is not going to have a problem at all. You've got 3 of the lots that are almost 1-acre lots. I mean, I was kind of thinking, man, you guys will welcome this, you know, with the big lots.
To follow that, there's some land behind these lots, I guess, that you also own. And you proposed a 50-foot right-of-way to be able to access that additional property, is that correct?
To access that additional property, we've left 50 foot off of McDaniels for future use. And then you can also access it off of Holly Hills, actually 2 spots on Holly Hills, where Holly Hills, where there's not a cul-de-sac, but where it just ends. you can access it from there also.
Do you already have plans for that?
We do not have anything official. We've actually drawn some sketches and such as that. Nothing's official. I mean, I'm looking to build my house there and you know, so I'm thinking terms, I want to build my house and possibly not do a road there right now. So that's a later, that's a conversation, you know, a few years down the road.
And I realize we're not talking about the 4 lots tonight, but can you tell me how those 4 will fit in to the same plans you talked about?
It'd be the same thing.
Those 4 lots are much smaller.
It's what you guys allow in the ordinance.
But it's smaller lots, do you still expect to do the $500,000
Yes, sir,
homes?
I do.
On those 4 lots also?
Yes, sir.
Thank
I mean, the house I build, I mean, I want to build what's in keeping with the area. You
I know
what's around.
in that area now from Breelove coming back toward town to where the end of your property is, on the south side of the street there, and currently 7 houses with 7 lots. And so on the north side, we'll have your 10 plus the one that's already there, plus the possibly 2 other lots on the corner of Breelove and McDaniel. So we could go from 7 lots on one side of the street to 14 on the other, 13 to 14 on the other. And I just want to be sure that by doubling the capacity, if you will, on the north side of the street from what was on the south, that it still fits within the character of the street.
And the 2 coming, Breedlove and McDaniel, are actually the end of Holly Hill, is that correct?
No.
I'm not, I think he's talking not my property.
No,
I think he's
the property-
referring,
Not his property, as the 2 lots next to Mr. Kelly's, there on the corner,
Okay, gotcha.
could, not his property, which I'm
Okay.
could also be developed.
Okay.
Would make 13 to 14, lots. I just
Yeah.
want to be sure that with 7 lots on one side of the street and 13, 14 on the other, that we're staying within the same character of the street.
and I think something was brought up, Mr. Kelly sent to me about doing alleyways on these. And the way the land, it slopes back, you know, probably half of these are going to cater to basements. So I think an alleyway and the houses we're going to build, I mean, people might want a swimming pool in the back, and I'm not sure an alleyway is going to be able to be suitable when you come in and go to the back. This is going to be your traditional estate lots, state houses that kind of need their own drive coming in to a garage, to a garage. So hopefully that addressed the alleyway. And now the alleyways look great on a suitable lot to where you've got the double road frontage and the alleyways, a lot of times they'll get 4 houses per one of these lots.
Would you consider doing any shared driveways?
We went down that road 20 years ago in Walton County, the shared driveways, and a few of them passed. And I don't know if you guys have seen those in the county. They look terrible. I mean, they really do. I mean, you can see where the double driveway ventures off. I mean, the price range house we're looking at doing, I think that's going to hinder the sale or some of the desirability of a shared there's a shared driveway over here on Walton Street, and when you look at it, you're just like, man, I mean, what were they thinking? Really. I mean, I just not sure you guys would want that. It just, from a development, from a aesthetics view, it doesn't look good, in my opinion. But
Do we have any other questions?
I just wanted, this is my district, and of course, I've heard from a lot of the residents in the area. And one of the major concerns is that several of the homeowners have sight distance issues now pulling out of their driveways. And I feel like that it's only fair that we, ask for a traffic study to be done to determine that certainly you have the right to develop 10 lots within this zoning category, but we need to ensure that they're, from a safety standpoint, that these are going to work. And the driveways may be that we have to strategically place those driveways, whatever. But I think we need to cover that before moving on. So my recommendation is going to be to table it.
So I have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion?
I want to say something about that.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I mean, I know Mr. Willett and his family well, and I know, obviously, the folks who have some reservations about this. I have some reservations about it. You've addressed some of those reservations. I think to be compatible with that neighborhood, you do need to build larger houses, even though I understand the zoning would allow you to build smaller ones. I think part of what we have here is this is a fairly unique tract. Charles Henson had a very large tract of land over there. He never intended to develop it. He died. It's out of the family, so now it's going to be developed. My objective, like anywhere else in the city, is to make sure that we have quality development. I take you at your word that if you're going to build a house over there, you're going to build a nice house for your family. You're going to build nice houses for other folks that are compatible with what's already there. I do think that the setbacks need to be increased to be compatible, particularly with what's across the street. And I share Ms. Malcolm's concern about traffic. Now, that's not really your problem as a developer. That's our problem as a city. But I think everybody in this room, if you drive down McDaniel, you understand it's become the alternative to Spring Street. It was never intended to be that way. It's supposed to be a quiet residential area. And I support doing the traffic study, and I support, once we see what I think is going to show, that we do something to really calm down the traffic on that street. I'm a runner. I run out McDaniel a lot. You're taking your life in your hands most of the time out there. People fly through there. And if we add, as Mr. Bradley says, another 10 to 14 driveways, some folks going to have trouble just getting out of their driveway without getting run over. And it's exacerbated by, you come up over that hump in front of Ms. Hickman's house, you just don't have any sight distance, and people just fly through there. So we need to, I think, work together to see if we can't come up with some sort of coherent plan. I'm not against you building them. You have a right to build them, and the zoning, as you pointed out, permits you to do what you propose to do. But we need, as a city, to maintain enough control with some conditions to make sure that this works out right. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
If that makes any sense at all.
And prior to moving with a vote on the tabling, and I'll address that in a moment, I did go right past your attorney, and would you like to go ahead and add or subtract anything from what's been said?
No, Mr. Mayor, we'll just, we'll leave it at that.
I appreciate your coming in. The motion was made to table, and that is until we can get a full traffic study done by an engineer. I believe you've already contacted.
Yes, Mayor, we've already started that process. It'll take a couple weeks at least.
30
And-
days
and-
would be my motion.
And in the meantime, I would appreciate it if you would run a little something by these neighbors. You can send it to me, and I can disperse it that shows this type of house that you want to build and what you're thinking about on how those houses are going to sit on the lots to alleviate some of their fears too. So I have a motion and a second to table until we have the engineering study. Any discussion?
I want to ask one question. Would you be willing for us to condition the approval of the 6 lots to a minimum of 50-foot setbacks on lot 7, 8, and 9? And of course, 5 and 6, I don't think we can address because of the stormwater, unless you're willing to put 6 even further back. House on six.
I mean, I'm in agreement to put 5 and 6, I mean, as back as much as you can. I think 7 is where you're gonna run into the problem, but for sure, 8, 9, 10, I have no problem with that. Even 6, I think 6 would work on that also. But what I'll do is I'll sketch on the houses on each lot, like,
I would appreciate it. I think that will do wonders.
you know, and then we can actually see where it goes. I mean, that's the thing is on lot 5, you build a house, you don't want to set it back too far in case they want to do a swimming pool or something in the back. You want to give enough room for that.
Right. I appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
And I want to tell you guys, y'all are doing a great job with Monroe.
I appreciate it. We've got some good folks in place.
Y'all got a great reputation.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion
Yeah, I'd like
carries.
to make another motion on that if I could, and that was, I appreciate what Mr. Willett said he's gonna do and correspond back with the neighbors and things. I would like, when we come back to meet again after the traffic study is presented, that we have a opportunity for the public to also speak at that point in time before that'd be after they reviewed what they've submitted and all of this traffic study's been done, that we have an opportunity to listen to the public.
Could we do another public hearing?
This is not a
Not a
action
public
by
hearing.
this board that is subject to the ZPL. I think we hit on this last time. It does not require a public hearing. Our office would not advise that you advertise it for such. That being said, this council always has the purview to hear from whomever they would like to. So when this comes back before the board, if you want to open it to individuals, the public, to hear from them, that's certainly fine. I don't think that it would be appropriate to actually advertise it as a public hearing, though, because it is not a zoning procedure. This is an administrative procedure under your development regs.
So we will call for public comment, but it won't be an official public hearing. Are you good with that, Mr. Bradley?
As I stated, the motion that we give the public the opportunity to speak.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying, I have a,
We have 2 motions on the floor. We need to close out the first motion.
sorry, I was in the middle of it, Larry. Motion number 1 to table until we hear from the engineering firm about the traffic study, which we expect within 30 days. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to Mr. Bradley's comment. I think we had a motion. Did we have a second?
Yes.
A second by Ms. Malcolm to post as a public hearing for our next called meeting.
No, Mr. Mayor, that's
Allow
not.
for public comments.
Allow for public comment, not a public hearing. Thank you. So I have a motion to allow for public comment, and I have a second from Ms. Malcolm, and is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to major, thank you, Mr. Willett, for coming in. Approval of the major subdivision, 321 Millage Avenue. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir, thank you. This is a long-standing development that's finally gotten to the point of being built out. This subdivision creates more than 5 lots, similar to the item we just discussed, and therefore requires planning and zoning recommendation and council approval. And the applicant is here for that purpose this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Dickinson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, moving to the resolution of the comprehensive plan update, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution by the City of Monroe, Georgia, adopting a minor plan amendment for the City of Monroe Comprehensive Plan to Community Work Program. Whereas the 1989 Georgia Planning Act requires that all local governments submit a comprehensive plan, and whereas OCGA 58-1 et sequitur gives the Department of Community Affairs authority to establish standards and procedures for appropriate and timely comprehensive planning by all local governments in Georgia, and whereas the City of Monroe Mayor and Council have identified an additional update required for the Community Work Program prior to the community's next required 5-year plan update, and whereas a copy of the minor plan amendment updates are attached to this resolution, whereas all portions of this minor plan amendment were completed by the City of Monroe, and whereas the comprehensive plan for the City of Monroe was reviewed by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs and was found in compliance with the local planning requirements, therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Monroe does hereby adopt an update for the City of Monroe Comprehensive Plan, which relates to the Community Work Program. That is the resolution this 11th day of February, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Have a motion to approve by Mr. Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to the resolution of the Service Delivery Strategy Agreement, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. Be it hereby resolved that the mayor is authorized to execute the minor amendment to the Walton County Service Delivery Strategy Agreement, which is required by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs for cities and counties to apply and receive funding for the identified services. Be it hereby resolved that the Form 2 Summary of Service Delivery Arrangements for Water Supply and Distribution, Wastewater Collection and Treatment, Stormwater and Road Construction and Maintenance will be revised to add the word grants to the funding method in Section 3 on each of these forms and for each local government who provides these services as shown in the existing Walton County Service Delivery Strategy. So resolved this 11th day of February 2020. That is the resolution, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Ms. Malcolm. Is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Little, I have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to the 2020 CDBG application, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. This is City of Monroe Fiscal Year 2020 CDBG application resolution, whereas the Georgia Department of Community Affairs has established the Community Development Block Grant Program to assist cities and counties with improvements to public facilities, economic development, and housing in Georgia, and whereas there exists in the city a need to provide street and drainage improvements to the City of Monroe's Fiscal Year 2020 CDBG target area, now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and the Monroe City Council that the city supports the application for Fiscal Year 2020 CDBG funds, and that the city will apply for these funds for street and drainage improvements in the city's Fiscal Year 2020 CDBG target area. The city commits to the required cash match for the project, $1,000 cash for the required audits, and all additional cash and/or in-kind services needed to complete the project over the grant amount. Be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized and directed to act as the official representative of the city, to act in connection with the application, to be responsible for compliance with applicable state and federal requirements of this program, and to provide for such additional information as may be required. Be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized to enter into an agreement for engineering and grant administration services relating to the application and subsequent grant, and to execute the application and other required documents on behalf of the city, including the grant award package. Be it further resolved that the city commits to own, operate, and maintain all proposed improvements. Further resolved that the city hereby adopts the Citizen Participation Plan of the Georgia Department of Community Affairs to ensure public involvement in the CDBG process. Further resolved that the city hereby acknowledges that the proposed project is subject to the requirements of Section 3 of the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968, and in accordance with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs Section 3 compliance plan, will to the greatest extent feasible comply with all Section 3 requirements. Further resolved that the city hereby acknowledges that the proposed project is subject to the requirements of Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 as amended, Section 104B2 of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended, and Section 105B3 of the National Affordable Housing Act of 1990. The city hereby commits to affirmatively furthering fair housing to the greatest extent feasible. Be it further resolved, the city hereby acknowledges that the proposed project is subject to the requirements of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Title II of the Americans with Disability Act of 1990, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and Executive Order 13166, and the Architectural Barriers Act of 1968. The city hereby commits to comply with all Section 504 requirements to the greatest extent feasible. Be it further resolved that the proposed street and drainage improvements are in conformance with the City of Monroe's comprehensive plan and are not inconsistent with the city's service delivery strategy. Be it further resolved that a true and dedicated commitment has been made to the project for the successful completion of the above improvements for the citizens, especially the city's low to moderate income citizens. So resolved this 11th day of February 2020, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Bradley. Mr. Ross Bradley, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Crawford. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to the resolution opposing House Bill 302 and Senate Bill 172. Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Monroe, Georgia, opposing House Bill 302 and Senate Bill 172, preemption of local building design standards. Whereas House Bill 302 and Senate Bill 172 would prohibit local governments from regulating building design elements in single or double-family dwellings, which could negatively impact economic development efforts and harm competitiveness. And whereas appropriate local design standards and land use policies create a diverse, stable, profitable, and sustainable residential development landscape. And whereas HB 302 and SB 172 are bills that would undermine self-determination of citizens to establish community standards as illustrated by the following. Municipal and county officials are elected in part to make decisions about the look and feel of their communities, which fosters economic development, preserves the character of communities, and municipalities and counties use design standards to ensure that the property values of surrounding property owners remain protected from incompatible development. And HB 302 and SB 172 would severely erode the ability of all 538 Georgia cities and 159 counties to address unique and community-specific quality of life issues, whereas county municipal governments use building design standards to protect property values, attract high-quality builders, and block incompatible development. And whereas the building design standards assure residences and business owners that their investments will be protected and that others who come behind them will be equally committed to quality. And whereas local governments spend a large amount of resources studying, surveying, crafting, and defining their vision and development strategies, and design standards are an integral part of those endeavors to attract residences, businesses, and the much-coveted trained workforce. And whereas development and redevelopment efforts should reflect the community and its vision while simultaneously creating a sense of place. And whereas county and municipal government officials are elected to make decisions about the look and feel of their communities, and HB 302 and SB 172 would transfer that power from duly elected local leaders to outside groups with little to no stake in the future or success of Georgia municipalities, including real estate developers and home builders. And whereas building design standards neither discourage nor favor affordable housing, nor prevent the availability of certain housing types as supporters of HB 302 and SB 172 purport. And whereas local government should have the ability to provide more affordable housing options without sacrificing their unique character or threatening economic growth. And whereas although historic districts are protected in HB 302 and SB 172, which indicates an understanding that standards do in fact make sense, downtown overlays or other similar special zoning districts are not. And whereas local governments should be empowered to enforce building design standards to make today's thriving downtown tomorrow's historic district. And whereas by limiting the ability of local governments to enforce building design standards in single or double family dwellings, HB 302 and SB 172 would negatively impact quality of life issues, including economic growth and the safety and welfare of Georgia citizens. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Monroe that this governing body voices its opposition to House Bill 302 and Senate Bill 172, preemption of local building design standards. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be delivered to the members of the city's local delegation and made available for distribution to the public and the press. So adopted this 11th day of February 2020. That is a resolution, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any?
Move adoption of the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for adoption by Mr. Larry Bradley and Mr. David Dickinson. Are there any questions, any discussion?
I'd just like to point out to the public that this is a critical bill, and just what we're experiencing tonight, but in a much broader sense, we need your support, and we need you to contact legislators to let them know how you feel about House Bill 302 and Senate Bill 107, because it could really impact cities, small cities, large cities, whatever. But I will tell you that the Georgia Association of Realtors are promoting this bill in a very big way. They have strong lobbyists at the Capitol, and you need to let your voice be heard.
And what she's saying is, what you've come here tonight to discuss, there would be no discussion. That would have just automatically gone through, and we'd have had to deal with the consequences. Any additional discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to the resolution supporting Senate Bill 309. Mr. Rosenthal?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution of the Mayor and Council of the City of Monroe, Georgia, supporting legislation for Senate Bill 309, Georgia Local Government Infrastructure Finance Authority Act, whereas locally elected officials work in partnership with citizens, the state of Georgia, and federal government to address ongoing funding needs for infrastructure projects and other capital improvements which are crucial to maintaining safe communities, impact economic development efforts, and whereas Georgia cities have $11.2 billion of capital needs between now and the year 2022, with the greatest needs being infrastructure, public safety, and government buildings, and whereas taxpayers consistently continue to invest local dollars by supporting special purpose local option sales tax and transportation special purpose local option sales tax referendums, and whereas tax increases alone will not be sufficient to address all outstanding projects, state legislation to establish a local government finance authority would provide a lower cost, efficient source for municipal and county governments to fund various projects and equipment needs, and whereas an authority could be operated by both the Georgia Municipal Association and the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia to issue tax-exempt bonds to local government for financing of goods, real and personal property, structures, and supplies, and whereas such financing would be through revenue bonds pursuant to intergovernmental contracts, and whereas while municipalities are currently authorized under Georgia law to participate in lease purchase financing, it is more expensive relative to other governmental financing options, and whereas in changing state law to provide municipalities and counties a more efficient funding source through the issuance of pooled revenue bonds by a local government finance authority will reduce the overall cost of capital spending and save Georgia taxpayers dollars. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Monroe, Georgia, that this governing body voices its support of Senate Bill 309, Georgia Local Government Infrastructure Finance Authority Act. That is the resolution this 11th day of February 2020, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any questions? Would you like him to read it again? I'll entertain a motion, please.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Bradley to approve, Mr. Ross Bradley to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. 2019 Budget Amendment Resolution, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution adopting the 2019 budget revisions for the City of Monroe, Georgia, appropriating revised amounts as shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the revised revenue projections, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations. Be it resolved by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Monroe, Georgia as follows. Whereas for the purpose of financing the conduct of affairs of the City of Monroe during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019, and ending December 31, 2019, the revised budget of the city's revenues and expenditures for such period as prepared and submitted to the City Council by the City Administrator and so approved by the Mayor and City Council. And whereas the amounts listed on the attached are the appropriations and transfers so authorized by the Mayor and City Council and are approved for the amounts and purposes indicated, be it further resolved that the expenditures shall not exceed the appropriations authorized by this budget and that the expenditures for the fiscal year shall not exceed funding available. So adopted by the Mayor and Council of the City of Monroe this 11th day of February 2020. That is the resolution, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the budget amendment.
I have a motion by Mr. Little to approve. Is there a second? Second. I have a second by Mr. Adcock. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to the approval of the GEMA HS Statewide Mutual Aid and Assistance Agreement. Is Mr. Owens available? Hey, Chief. Are there any questions? Comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Ms. Malcolm. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to appointments of the tree board, we have 3 appointments expiring on March 1st, 2020. First, Mr. Steve Brown would like to continue to serve on the tree board. I need a motion to reappoint him for a 3-year term to expire March 1st, 2023.
So moved.
Brown be reappointed.
I have a motion by Mr. Larry Bradley and
Second.
second by Mr. Little. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Second, Ms. Krista Carroll would like to continue to serve on the tree board. I need a motion to reappoint Ms. Krista Carroll for a 3-year term to expire March 1st, 2023.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley and a second by Mr. Dickinson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to the third one, Ms. Susan Pelham would like to continue to serve on the tree board. I need a motion to reappoint Ms. Susan Pelham for a 3-year term to expire March 1st, 2023. I have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Crawford. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Schedule of fees for the Fire Marshal's Office. Chief Owens? Are there any questions for Chief Owens? We discussed these last week. Hearing no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move we adopt the schedule as presented.
Motion to approve the adoption by Mr. Larry Bradley. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to the second reading of the GMEB's Restated Defined Benefit Retirement Plan Ordinance, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend the Georgia Municipal Employees Benefit System Plan regarding the retirement plan for the employees of the City of Monroe. The Mayor and the Council of the City of Monroe hereby ordain as follows. The following is an ordinance to amend the retirement plan for the employees of the City of Monroe, Georgia, in accordance with and subject to the terms and conditions set forth in the attached Georgia Municipal Employees Benefit System GMEB's Defined Benefit Plan Adoption Agreement, General Addendum, and Service Credit Purchase Addendum. When accepted by the authorized officers of the city and GMEBs, the foregoing shall constitute a contract between the city and GMEBs, all as authorized and provided pursuant to OCGA 4751 et sequitur. Be it ordained by the mayor and council of the city of Monroe, Georgia, and it is hereby ordained by the authority thereof. Article 1, the retirement plan for the employees of the city of Monroe, Georgia is hereby amended as set forth and subject to the terms and conditions stated in the following GMEBs Defined Benefit Plan Adoption Agreement, the General Addendum, and the Service Credit Purchase Addendum. See the attached Exhibit A for a complete copy of the agreement, General Addendum, and the Service Credit Purchase Addendum. Article 2, except as otherwise specifically required by law or by the terms of the agreement, the General Addendum, or the Service Credit Purchase Addendum, the rights and obligations under the plan with respect to persons whose employment or terms of office with the city was terminated for any reason whatsoever prior to the effective date of this ordinance are fixed and shall be governed by such plan, if any, as it existed and was in effect at the time of such termination. Article 3, all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are expressly repealed. However, the previously adopted GMEB's Defined Benefit Plan Adoption Agreement and any addendums thereto will remain in effect and be considered an addendum to the agreement. Article 4, this ordinance shall take effect from and after its adoption by the mayor and the council of the city of Monroe, Georgia. This constitutes the second reading this 11th day of February, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Ms. Malcolm. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Now, it's that time of the night that I realize that I missed something. We jumped right in after Ms. Blanford and Mr. Chick gave their comments and did not give the opportunity to Mr. O'Brien or Mr. Ross to speak. So I need a motion, please, to open up a second round of public comment, please. Have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Malcolm. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Second round of public comment. Mr. O'Brien, are you available? It's 321 millage. Did we discuss your topic? I'm sorry to have jumped the gun on that, but it was just important enough.
That's fine.
Anything you'd like to tell us?
No, I was just looking for the approval for the final plat on that project. You know, we're looking, I just finished the project over here on Midland, those 4 houses, and we're kind of looking to do the same similar thing over there in that neighborhood. One of those lots over there, I'm going to be in my personal home too. So we're just trying to, look for approval on that over there, just to try to fix that side of the town up, make it look a little nicer.
Perfect. We're excited with the work you've done, and I hope you're good with our decision from earlier.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck Ross, are you, so you signed up too? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming out tonight. I know it's a little bit of angst watching how the sausage gets made, but I appreciate your patience. I need a motion to adjourn, please. I have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley. Is it in a Mr. Larry Bradley with a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Good night, everybody. Thank you.